All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Whitman, and we're back after a much-needed break following the draft rush. And it's going to be a shorter show here today. We're going to talk about some of the big news circling the slow news cycle that is the NFL post-draft. And then I got a fun topic. We're going to revisit my draft grades, my D and F graded picks from the 2019 draft. Coming fresh off of my draft grades videos, I think it'll be fun to kind of see the picks I was really critical of, and was I right, was I wrong about that criticism. So that'll be fun to kind of go back and take a look with now 2 years have passed. That's kind of my cutoff for when I want to revisit those draft grades. Then we'll get into the mailbag and all that stuff. But yeah, going to be a shorter show. I'm currently working up on the next-gen Xbox roster for Madden. A lot of people have been asking about that. I just got all the transactions done. Now it's on to rookie creation. And then on to deep dives after that. My favorite thing I do on this channel, a lot of you guys are familiar with the deep dive series, so that'll be starting up in about 2 weeks or so. And then the podcast here, you know, the deep dives are going to probably overwhelm my time as far as being able to do these podcasts, and the content's fairly similar there. But I will say I might be doing kind of bi-weekly mailbag question only podcasts on the audio version. So if you are not subscribed to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Pocket Casts, wherever you get your podcasts, make sure you do check that out. I will be posting the mailbag versions over the summer, and then when the season gets back next year, we'll return to the video show here on YouTube. So yeah, that's really all I have. Let's get into the show, and we're going to start with the Aaron Rodgers just topic, and I'm going to try not to spend too much time on it because I think we've all had a little bit of fatigue with this story, if you can even call it that. So you guys know, like, Aaron Rodgers is my dude. I'm not afraid of saying it. I've got his signed jersey sitting right behind me for the studio here. Like, he is my favorite athlete in the world. I'm not afraid to say that. So this does ring true to me. It hits home, if you will. And this has been kind of pulling me in a lot of different directions. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I'm sure a lot of you guys want my opinions on what all is happening here. So obviously, it's very clear that we can say for fact that Aaron Rodgers is unhappy with the situation with the Green Bay Packers. And I'm going to visit that in just a second. First off here is, to me, a bigger story. And that is that Adam Schefter effed up. And didn't just F up. Honestly, what he did is really effed up. Because his tweet on draft day that set the whole media, world into a storm that we all saw. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably on Twitter. You saw all of it. Podcasts roasting Aaron Rodgers, Terry Bradshaw going on TV saying he's selfish and a scumbag and all this stuff. That's paraphrasing, but basically. Schefter's tweet, what it came down to was, at best, was a reach. At worst, it was defamation and a lie. And that became very true when he went on the Dan Patrick Show about 5 days later. So if you're unfamiliar with the tweet from Adam Schefter, he said that on draft day, he tweeted that Aaron Rodgers has told the Green Bay Packers that he will not return to the team. That is a finite tweet. And not just that, that is Aaron Rodgers has told them. He is doing this, and not just that, he's doing it on draft day, which was all of the narrative, right? He's selfish. How could he do this? How could he come out and screw the team over, send them into a shuffle on draft day? This is one of the most all-time selfish moves of any athlete ever. Wow, Aaron Rodgers. And everybody piles on. Aaron's just this selfish, egotistical jerk. We were at dinner with my grandma for Mother's Day, and she was like, wow, Aaron Rodgers is such an egotist, isn't he? And that's what's messed up about this tweet, because in this world, there's no accountability. There's no, evidence anymore. It's just you just say something, it gets huge, and then everyone just jumps on it, right? You just jump on it, and that is fact now. And most of the people that heard this story, they don't care that Adam Schefter went on Dan Patrick's Show 5 days later and basically admitted that he made it all up. And there's no repercussions coming Adam Schefter's way. which there should be. This was a defamation of Aaron Rodgers. So if you missed what happened about 5 days later after this massive media storm, where people that if you didn't already hate Aaron Rodgers, you're going to definitely hate him now after all the stuff that was coming out. And we don't know. We don't know what those reports, the texts that he supposedly sent other players, and this idea that he wanted Gutekunst fired. It seems most of that stuff was fabricated. And I don't know. Some of it might be true, but there's been no evidence. There's been no sources. There's been no images of some of these things. It's all just hoopla. We don't know what is true at this point with this story. But yeah, he goes on Dan Patrick's show about 5 days after the draft. And Adam Schefter admitted that this was fabricated, that it was a reach, that he was collecting this based on information that he had heard over the last 3 months. And you don't mess around on the Dan Patrick show. When he started saying that, Dan Patrick was like, oh boy, like, Adam, what are you doing? Like, you can't do that. You can't just make this story up, which is what he did. He said, this is a collection of things that I had heard. This was going to come out eventually, and I just decided it was time. On draft day, yeah, Adam, I'm sure you just happened to decide that was the time to do it. He admitted there was no text from Aaron Rodgers. There was no text from Aaron Rodgers' camp. There was no inside source with the Green Bay Packers that had reported this, let alone that day, that week. There was no hard evidence of any of this at all, that there was a finite Aaron Rodgers is done in Green Bay. That was completely fabricated. 100% false. And this is following all of the podcasts, all of the radio shows, all of the tweets of people just slandering, attacking Aaron Rodgers' character, leadership, questioning his commitment to football, like you name it. And if you didn't already have an opinion on Aaron Rodgers before all this stuff, you definitely do now. And a lot of people, they're not even going to care that this stuff is fake. They just want to believe that it's true, and they're going to continue to go after it. So to me, this is much more about Adam Schefter completely screwing up. And to me, I've lost, if not all respect, a lot of respect for Adam Schefter. And I think it's going to catch up with him, what he did. I think it's really messed up. I think it's borderline defamation. At worst, it was a lie. At best, it was a lie. At worst, it's something that Aaron Rodgers could potentially sue Adam Schefter over for defamation. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how that works. But it was messed up. It is messed up what Adam Schefter did, and there's no repercussions. You know, nobody's going and attacking Adam Schefter now. They just want to keep piling on Aaron Rodgers because it must be true because Adam Schefter said it. So that to me is a bigger story. But no one wants to talk about that because it's Aaron Rodgers, and there's an opportunity to hate on Aaron Rodgers, so we're going to take it as a media folk. But as far as Aaron Rodgers' actual situation, the football side of this, he's unhappy. I think that's very clear. Whether, whatever Adam Schefter was saying, there's a very, very strong reason to believe that Aaron Rodgers is unhappy with the Green Bay Packers. I think that much is very clear. But what's messed up is he's handling it behind closed doors. I was listening to a podcast today. I'm not going to name names. But he was criticizing Aaron Rodgers for being so public about this and comparing it to Matthew Stafford, who did it all behind closed doors. They worked it out man to man. That's what Aaron Rodgers has been doing. He's been quiet. He's been a professional. I don't know where all this other stuff is coming from. There's been no tweets from Aaron Rodgers, been no public statements or anything. So he is handling it the way a professional should, which I appreciate. And, I've had my 2 cents about, player empowerment and all that stuff, which there is a side of me that's like, I don't like these players basically deciding where they get to go. But in Aaron Rodgers' case, they're forcing him out the door, right? They drafted Jordan Love. They are prepared to move on from him. So I think it's a lot different from, say, like Deshaun Watson's situation where he's 6 months removed from just signing a contract extension. Nothing had really changed, and then all of a sudden he's like, I want out, which would completely screw the organization over, who has $100 million in dead cap attached to him because of that contract. So, yes, I'm going to be a little more critical of that than Aaron Rodgers, who signed a contract extension 3 years ago, and since then they have drafted his replacement. So I do think there is a difference there. Aaron Rodgers is like, you don't want me here. Whereas it's in the other way, it's like, they don't want me here, or I don't want to be here, So I do get that side from Aaron Rodgers. And I think he has a reason to be pretty upset. He said he wants to play here till he's 40. He's done everything for this team. He's 37. He's had multiple knee injuries. He's had 3 concussions. He's had multiple shoulder injuries. He's won 3 MVPs. He's won a Super Bowl. And all at the same time, he's played for a team that doesn't ask for his opinion. They don't, sign free agents. The 1 year they did it was following them firing Ted Thompson because the roster was in shambles. It was mostly practice squad talent. And Brian Gutekunst took over and was like, wow, I need to actually sign some players. And Gutekunst did a good job that year. But since then, they've just gone back to the old Green Bay Packers and just ignoring free agency entirely. They don't keep players as well as other teams. They don't manage the cap as well as other teams. And they don't draft particularly well. They don't draft terribly, but they're a middle-of-the-road drafting team at best. And what this is about is Aaron's be better. Come on, you want me out the door. We're the only team in the NFC that got worse this year. Seriously, the Packers roster is worse than it was at the end of last year. You can't say that about the Bucs. You can't say that about the Rams, the Niners, the Cardinals, the Vikings in this division, the Bears in this division. Every competitor in the NFC got better, and the Packers got worse. And Aaron can see that. He can see that. He's not dumb. So he's mad about that. He's mad that they don't ask his opinion like they do for Tom Brady and a lot of other elite veteran quarterbacks. They will go to the quarterback and say, what do you need? What do you want? Have an opinion with this organization. They don't do that with Aaron because the Packers are this old school 1960s mentality, the same mentality that has been just running this organization into the ground for years. Goes back to all the free agency and the draft and develop philosophy and all that stuff. So there's that side of it, and then there's the Jordan Love side of it, where I don't think Aaron has an issue with Jordan Love as a person. I think he even understands the selection of Jordan Love to a degree. But that does come with an emotional weight of, wow, this team that I have poured everything into, he invested in ownership in the Milwaukee Bucks. Like I said, he's had 3 concussions for this team. His body has been bent over backwards for this team. He's said that he wants to retire as a player on this team at 40 years old when he signed that contract. He was like, I want to finish this thing out. I want to be, I want to do this whole thing in Green Bay. He didn't want to be Brett Favre, but they drafted his replacement. And that has an emotional toll on you when you know that the organization is pushing you out, especially when you look at the contractual situation that Green Bay has set up where they can move on from Aaron Rodgers after this year because his dead money is almost all gone. So they have no financial commitment to Aaron if they trade him after this upcoming season. And then they get 2 years to evaluate Jordan Love on that rookie contract. It's very clear that that's what Green Bay wants to do at this point. And Aaron doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be just another pawn in this entire scheme. He knows what's up. He can see around the league. He can see teams trying to win now, committing to veteran quarterbacks. He's not dumb. He knows that this organization can do a lot better, and he's upset about it. And he wants to be here for this team, but they don't want him to be here. And if they've had this standstill for 3 months, there may be a point where Aaron's like, look, if you don't want to do what the simple things that I'm asking for here, which are not that complicated, it's commit to me long term and ask me for opinions on some of these guys. Maybe I didn't want Eric Stokes. And I know that this was all before that, but maybe I don't want Eric Stokes, a second-round corner in the first round. I want Elijah Moore to throw to. Maybe that's what Aaron wants. Again, all of this is speculation, but that's my opinion on this. It's not this massive story of Aaron's just, putting his foot in the ground and saying, I'm not coming back. It's him saying, look, guys, I'm pissed. You're treating me like some D-level practice squad or just another pawn in the machine. I'm more than that. I just am. I'm a 3-time MVP. We've been over all of it. He's statistically the best quarterback to ever play. Well, efficiency-wise, whatever. We don't need to get into who's the best quarterback of all time, but if you want to look at a grading profile, a statistic profile, Aaron's the dude. He's in that conversation at least. So, no, he shouldn't be treated like John Kuhn or James Jones. He should be treated like Aaron Rodgers. He should be treated like, Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, who gets everything he wants down there. So I get why Aaron's pissed. And when this all came out, I was like, I don't like how he's handling it. But turns out that was all false. He is doing this behind closed doors. I think he is handling it like a professional. He's voicing his displeasure, which I think he has every right to do. So, I'm going to wrap this thing up because it's dragging on, but that's just where I stand on this. It got blown way out of proportion. Aaron's pissed, and I think he has a right to be pissed. Do I think players should be able to force their way out of an organization? No. But when you draft his backup, you give him nothing for a decade, I think it reaches a point where he says, I'm at the back end of my career, and I think it's best if we part ways, which is basically what Matthew Stafford did. And I had no problems with that. Go behind closed doors, handle it man-to-man, which very much seems like the way Aaron's handling this. Because there's been nothing from him that's been like this big outcry. It's all, they're working it out. He flew to Green Bay like 3 days ago. They're trying to figure this thing out, but relationships are tough. And the last layer of this is there's no owner in Green Bay, right? When there was reports of Tom Brady and Belichick and Jimmy Garoppolo and that whole feud, which is actually very similar to what's going on right here, the Patriots had an owner in Robert Kraft to step in and say, nope, Bill, I'm making an executive decision here. You can have the power of anything else here, but you're going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. We're going to stick with Tom Brady. There's no owner in Green Bay, right? There's a president who doesn't have the power to do that. You have a GM who does have the power to do that, but he's on Jordan Love's side because he drafted the guy. He didn't draft Aaron Rodgers. And then you have Aaron Rodgers' side of this. So it's just a very complex situation that's kind of reaching a standstill, that has been completely blown out of proportion by the media. So that's my stance on the Aaron Rodgers situation. We will move on. And I want to talk about Tim Tebow too, because it reaches a certain point where it's like, do we celebrate anything anymore? Everyone's so mad that Tim Tebow is getting a chance at a 90-man roster spot. And Colin Kaepernick is trending on Twitter. Colin Kaepernick, take the politics out of it. Colin Kaepernick didn't say, I'll come back and try and play tight end. This has nothing to do with it. Look at Logan Thomas. He flamed out at quarterback, and he got another chance. He broke out at like 29 years old. It's incredible the amount of just the reaches people have to just hate on random stuff. This, to me, it's a fun sports story. Tim Tebow was a bust at quarterback. He was a Heisman-winning quarterback, played for Urban Meyer, who's a bust. He went to play baseball. It didn't work out there. He still feels like he has the athletic tools. He has a connection with Urban Meyer. And he said, hey, can I come in and compete? I'm going to bust my ass, and I want to try to make it as a tight end in the NFL, 33 years old. Is that not just like an objectively fun story? What are we still like bagging on Tim Tebow from like liking God 10 years ago? I don't get why it's everybody, the media, former players, everyone's just piling on Tim Tebow like he doesn't deserve this. There's other players that deserve this opportunity. What opportunity are we talking about here? He got a camp invite and basically a futures contract. Do you realize how many bad players get invited to 90-man rosters? Like, it's not like they gave him a bunch of guaranteed money and a multi-year contract. They said, yeah, let's bring you in. Let's see how good a shape you are. Let's let you compete. Their tight end depth chart. Let's pull up their tight end depth chart, and you tell me if Tim Tebow is any worse than the players already on their roster. Because we don't. Chris Manhertz is probably better than Tim Tebow. They drafted Luke Farrell in the 5th round, who's a blocking specialist. Tyler Davis was a nobody out of Georgia Tech who's done nothing for them. Looks like they brought James O'Shaughnessy back. And Ben Ellefson, who has nothing. So you can say for sure that James O'Shaughnessy and Chris Manhertz are better tight ends. There's a 3rd spot on that roster for another tight end. And they're just saying, sure, Tim, let's bring you in. Urban Meyer trusts, he has a relationship with him. Welcome to life. People are going to hire people that they trust and they have a relationship with. The world was built on nepotism, if you will. Like it or love it, it's just the way things are. People are going to hire you if they trust you and they have a relationship with you. But it's not like other people are getting robbed of Tim Tebow. That's what people are so mad about. Like, really? Do you realize that 3,000 football players get in the same opportunity that Tim Tebow has? You're getting mad about one guy getting a camp invite? Why is this not an objectively fun story? Why are we not rooting for Tim Tebow to make it as a 33-year-old, tight end? Well, it's a fun story. I'm rooting for him. I'm excited to see it. Why do we need something to be mad about? Why can't we just, as sports fans, be happy for Tim Tebow? So that was a rant. I can't believe the negativity around this signing. Like, who cares? It's fun. It's football. Enjoy it. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy talk. Man, the amount of people just ripping the Jags and Tim Tebow. Who cares? All right. Now we have a fun topic. We're going to revisit my 2019 draft grades and go through my D's and my F's and just revisit the grade, why I felt that way, and how it's played out. So we're just going to go down the list that I made here. And my first D grade on this list is Jelani Tavai in the second round to the Detroit Lions. I gave it a D. And the reason I gave it a D is just because he didn't have a lot of upside as a player. And that was way too early of a pick to spend on a guy that belonged in the 5th or the 6th round. So Tavai's still on the team. He's probably their best linebacker, to be honest, but that's really not saying much. Jamie Collins is in there now, so I guess it'd be him. But, I think this grade holds up. I think Lions fans would agree with that. He's been okay. He's started a lot of games, but he has not done anything that a 5th or a 6th round linebacker couldn't do, and that was really my criticism of the pick. And now that Patricia's scheme is getting phased out here, I don't think he holds on to that job much longer. He was a very scheme-dependent player, but no one was taking Jelani Tavai in the second round. Everybody knew it was a reach, and I criticized the pick and gave it a D, which I think is held up. Now we have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, second-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles. I could not believe that they drafted this player over DK Metcalf, because Metcalf was just a much better version at everything than Whiteside, who's like a contested catch guy. And a lot of people knew this at the time. Some people liked this pick. Some people had a, first round hype, second round grade on him. I had a 5th to a 6th round grade on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. It was a situation where I stuck to my grades. It paid off. The guy stinks. He should not have been drafted based on what he's done in Philadelphia. He's had plenty of opportunities to see the field there with all the injuries they've had. We've seen Travis Fulgham be a better version of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. We've seen, Ward, the former Houston quarterback's been a better receiver. So, yeah, that one definitely holds up. A D for J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And then Daniel Jones for the New York Giants. I gave an F. And my pro comp for Daniel Jones was Ryan Tannehill. And this was pre-Titans Ryan Tannehill. And I think that's held up. Ryan Tannehill was a bottom 10 starting quarterback who, up until he found the perfect scheme fit and seemed to really develop in an unexpected way, was just not a franchise quarterback. And that's why I shredded the Giants for this pick. Because it was way too early to take him. It was one of those scenarios where you could have gotten him later. You could have not had these crazy expectations for him as the 6th overall pick, which also means you're going to be committed to him more because you invested so much in him, which we're kind of seeing that today. They passed on a Justin Fields, for example, to stick with Daniel Jones. Is that a situation that they're going to really regret? And it's not that Daniel Jones has been a bad player. I never thought he was a bad player. I just did not think he was worth, let alone a first-round pick, a top 10 pick. And he's been a better player than an F. Maybe you would change that to a D, but I think my criticism of it still holds up because he's not a quarterback that you spend the 6th overall pick on. He's got everything in the world this year to make it happen, and maybe he still proves it wrong, but I just don't think he has the traits and I don't like to say it factor too often, but to me what that comes down to is pocket sense, play extension, the ability to make plays out of structure. I think that's kind of that it factor that he just doesn't really have, right? He's kind of like Kirk Cousins at best. So, I think you bump it from an F to a D, but the criticism holds up. So I'd say I'm 3 for 3 there. This next one I think is probably the biggest L for me on this list, and that's Dexter Lawrence. I was probably a little overcritical, maybe a little bit overly emotionally attacking the Giants at this point in my career, which I think I'm doing a better job of staying away from that kind of stuff in hindsight. But I still don't think it was a great pick. They got this pick by trading Odell Beckham away, which actually maybe was a good move, to be honest. Odell he hasn't been a a stable force for the Browns. He hasn't been able to stay healthy and just hasn't been the same guy. So that actually wasn't the worst move. They got Jabril Peppers. They got Dexter Lawrence. I'll actually say, like, the Giants are walking out of that trade a lot better than I thought they would. But would I still have drafted Dexter Lawrence there? Probably not, but he's been a very good football player, which is exactly what I said he would be. Was probably just a little bit overly critical of the pick. I think they still could have done more with it, but I think it's more of like a C pick in hindsight. So I will say I was wrong to give that one an F. Wes Martin in the 4th round to the Washington football team. He was an interior offensive lineman. And I didn't think he was any good. And he hasn't been able to hold on to a job there. He's been nothing short of a backup, and I thought it was too early to draft that player, so I gave it a D. That evaluation has held up to this point. Jalen Hurd. I went at the 49ers here in this draft grades video. Jalen Hurd was a receiver out of Baylor. He was a converted quarterback. And I saw him as a project. I couldn't believe the Niners spent a 3rd-round pick on Jalen Hurd, and they did. And there's been opportunities there, right? Tebow's had a hard time staying healthy. Ayuk was kind of in and out of the lineup last year, and Hurd himself has had a hard time staying healthy. Did he opt out? He was nowhere to be found. He was either injured or opted out last year. So in theory, they could still prove me wrong with this pick, but he just hasn't seen the field at all. So we don't know if my evaluation there was right or wrong, considering it's been mostly injury-related stuff. But still, the D grade, I think, holds up, whether it was for the right purposes or not. Then I also gave them a D grade for drafting Mitch Wisniewski, a punter in the 4th round. It's just, why would you draft a punter in the 4th round? You know, there could have been other ways to go there. I'd have to revisit who I would have picked at the time, but he's their punter right now. He's not a bad punter, but, 4th round, really? Just, I don't know. I wouldn't have done it. They might redo it. I'm not sure. Then we have Drew Sample, who went in the 2nd round. He's a tight end. He went to the Cincinnati Bengals. I gave that a D. And Drew is very slowly developing there in Cincinnati. I think he's also had some injury issues. This is going to be a make-or-break year for Drew Sample. I think he has a chance to prove me wrong here. But at the same time, that's kind of the thing with tight ends, right? You either take a guy early that's a freak athlete like Pat Freiermuth or Eric Ebron or Noah Fant, Kyle Pitts right now, but Kyle Pitts is a different exception. You either take a guy that's a freaky athlete that you need to develop, or you take a guy that is like T.J. Hawkinson, for example. Even like, go back to last year, you look at the Notre Dame, Cole Kmet. Like, he was a polished tight end, right? I didn't think he was worth a 2nd-round pick, but I definitely liked him more than Drew Sample. So I think you're either taking a guy with more polish and day 1 impact, or you're taking a freak athlete to develop. Drew Sample was neither of those, right? He was more of a 4th or 5th-round prospect who was a decent blocker, but really needed to be refined. And that's what you're seeing here. So that's playing out. He could still be a good player, but so is Foster Moreau, who I think was in that draft. So was Dawson Knox, which was a big part of my criticism for that draft pick. Was I just thought there was better tight ends on the board. I didn't think Drew Sample was worth that pick, and I think that's held up. I think the Bengals would take Dawson Knox or Foster Moreau, who I, again, said they should have taken, in a heartbeat. So that is held up. Sion Taki went in the 3rd round to the Cleveland Browns. I gave that a D. He's actually outperformed that. He's been a much better football player than I thought he would be. He's been really good at sort of being that outside linebacker and patrolling the sidelines, showing some good pursuit ability, really stable tackler, even done some nice things in coverage there. He's not a great player, and I don't think he's going to be starting in Cleveland for much longer. So I think maybe like a C+ or a B- on that one now, but I would say that I was wrong. Cleveland made an okay pick there in the 3rd round. Then this one's interesting. Christian Wilkins to the Miami Dolphins. Now, I gave this one a D because I didn't see the upside with the 13th overall pick for Christian Wilkins. I believe I had a 1st to a 2nd round, maybe even a true 2nd round grade on Christian Wilkins. I never doubted that he was not going to be a day 1 impact, that he wouldn't be a really good football player, but you just don't really want to draft that so early. Especially, what I was really critical of with this was I was like, if you're going to take a defensive tackle, and you're the Miami Dolphins, who were not a good team that year, I said, take Jeffrey Simmons. It's just an ACL injury. You don't need a day one impact like Christian Wilkins, right? You need upside. You need star talent. And I said, take Jeffrey Simmons, redshirt him a year. It's actually going to help you lose more games and get a better pick the next year because he's not going to play much, if at all. And then you get a star defensive tackle, which Jeffrey Simmons has been a beast for the Tennessee Titans. He's one of the ascending stars in the NFL. And Christian Wilkins is just a guy, right? He's good. He's a starting caliber player. It's exactly what I said he would be. But it just has not returned value for the Dolphins. So that has really held up, especially when you see Jeffrey Simmons developing the way he has. So it was a situation where I would say I was right to be critical of the Dolphins for that pick. I think they would trade Wilkins for Jeffrey Simmons in a heartbeat if they could. And it's not me saying Wilkins is a bad player. It was not worth the 13th overall pick. Then we had the Jets. They took Chuma Edoga in the 3rd round. I gave that a D. I thought he was, a late day 3 developmental tackle prospect. They way overdrafted him, and he's still developing. He's going to compete for time this year, but that has held up. That was just way too early to take him. Same with Trayvon Wesco. I gave that a D pick, and that was another scenario. I think both Dawson Knox, I think had gone. I think Knox was a 3rd round pick to the Bills, but Foster Moreau was still available. He was a really good tight end in Las Vegas. And Wesco to me didn't have upside, but he is going to have a role with this new offense. I think he could play that sort of Kyle Juszczyk, Josiah DeGuara, Kari Blasingame role in this wide zone Shanahan offense. So he could have a good year there in this system, but that was not the system in place at the time. They had no idea that they were going to be running that scheme in 3 years. And it was just kind of he's just not an impact player. He's been on the field as like a blocking specialist, but it was just early. So I'll stand by that. It was an early 4th round pick as well. And then this was one of my better draft calls that I really just went out on a limb on. I gave Josh Oliver, the tight end of Jacksonville, in the 3rd round. I gave that an F. And I don't just throw around Fs willy-nilly. There's only 3 Fs on this entire list. In the entire draft, I only gave 3 picks an F. And again, the Dexter Lawrence one, I was kind of out of place to do that. But the Josh Oliver pick, I was like, I remember watching his tape because he ran like a 4.6 40, which was good. It was a good 40 time for a tight end. But I watched his tape. He did nothing well. He didn't run routes. He didn't block. He didn't show the speed on tape. He played a small level of competition. He didn't produce. I did not get it. I believe I had a 6th to a priority free agent round grade on him, just as a guy like 6th, 7th round, take a flyer on a guy that is technically fast. But they drafted him at the top of the 3rd round. They just traded him to Baltimore. Maybe Baltimore gets something out of him 3 years later. But that was a great call. Give that pick an F. It's totally held up. He's not even on the team anymore. They were lucky to get a future potential pick back for him. And then the last player on this list, Josh Jacobs, running back for the Raiders, I gave a D. And I love Josh Jacobs. I loved him coming out. I think my pro comp for him was Ezekiel Elliott. And he's been about as good of a football player as Ezekiel Elliott. Now, Cowboys fans are going to hate me for that, but it's kind of true. I mean, he's a really good football player. Maybe not as explosive as Zeke necessarily, but as far as production, yards per carry, all that, and don't back me up on the yards per carry thing. I don't look at stat sheets, but just based on like how I view those running backs, I'd say they're both top 10 running backs. I really like Josh Jacobs, but the Raiders were not in a place to draft that player, and they still aren't in a position where they could draft a running back. And again, really good football player, but they could have used better pass rush help. They could have used better corner help. They could have used just anything else other than running backs. They just signed Kenyon Drake. He's going to be a complimentary piece there. In hindsight, that was not a good pick. That was part of the Khalil Mack trade. They basically traded Khalil Mack for a running back because they got a 1st, 2nd round pick swap later, but this was basically the pick for Khalil Mack. Yikes, man. That's just not a good pick. Jacobs is a great football player, but you'd take Khalil Mack on that defense in a heartbeat. So I will stand by it. I've said some teams you can draft a running back in the first round. It makes sense. I think Pittsburgh Steelers could have done, maybe the second round a little differently, but some teams, when you're a defensive-minded team, you're ready to win right now, you can't afford a star running back, there's no other great options out there, it can make sense to draft a running back in the first round. That was not the position the Raiders were in. They were not a good football team. They were one of the worst teams in the league at that point in time. So that's those are every D and F grade that I gave in the 2019 draft. I'm proud of this list. I think this was my second big year doing it. I think I hit on all but two of those. At least some of the criticism was really warranted. I guess looking back on it, you would say Sion Taki was better than I expected. And you would say Dexter Lawrence was not a true F. That pick was better than I graded it. And then maybe Daniel Jones has been a little bit better than I expected, but really not by much. Not by much at all. So for the most part, 90% accuracy on the picks that I really did not like. And we'll do this exercise again next year. But it's fun to go back and look. And I get all these comments this time of year like, what's the point of doing draft grades? I trust my GM more than this YouTuber. Well, it turns out when I'm really critical of the picks, I have a pretty good record of doing that. So just a fun experiment. Now we're going to wrap up the show with the mailbag. So this is from Alex. Hey Marcus, love your channel. It's really helped me understand the game of football. I'm only 15, but I find it incredibly interesting to listen to you talk. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then your question here is, I'd love to know the difference between a Will and Mike linebacker. I've seen so many different names for linebacker positions. Will, Mike, weak side, strong side, Jack, walkout. Can't find definitions for any of them. Yeah, so depending on the scheme, a lot of these definitions are getting aged out. Most of the 3-4 teams, they might technically use those definitions, Mike and Sam, but they really don't hold much weight in a 3-4 defense because you're going to have two linebackers on the field. Whether you're in base nickel or you're in your base 3-4, you got your two off-ball linebackers. So if you are a base 3-4 team, I would say don't really worry about that. You might get a Jack or a Sam might be considered the outside linebackers in those systems, but that's, you could use that interchangeably with 3-4 edge, 3-4 linebacker. That's the really nitty gritty details of what that system calls those positions, just like in the locker room. But as far as we talk about it, that doesn't make much of a difference. Now, 4-3 base teams, you can find more defined roles there. So your Mike linebacker is between the tackles, usually going to be a bigger middle linebacker, usually better at run defense. And then Sam is going to be the strong side linebacker, which more often than not is going to be an under or an over front, which means that they're actually up on the ball playing almost like an edge. And when you get those fronts, it's really just a different type of 3-4 defense. We're really getting into it here, but if you have a 4-3 defense where you're supposed to have three linebackers, if you take that strong side linebacker and put him up basically as a 3-4 outside linebacker, if you just say the defensive end on the other side is another 3-4 outside linebacker, he just has his hand in the dirt, that's basically the same front. So a lot of times that Sam role is going to be kind of the strong side guy who often is going to play on the line of scrimmage just outside of the tackle, and they're good at run defense, occasionally blitzing, covering the flat, basically like an edge player a lot of the times. Not always, though. And then your Will is going to be the weak side, run and chase, almost in the modern game, a linebacker safety hybrid type of player. Those guys are usually a lot smaller, faster. You're going to get that backside chase. The reason those guys play the weak side is because they're either going to have really good speed to come from the flank and catch up to some of these guys running the other way, because more often than not, teams run to the strong side. Or if they do run at the will to the weak side of the formation, there's going to be less blockers over there. So they're going to be in a better position to navigate traffic and make a play, because those guys usually are undersized and aren't good at taking on blocks and stuff. So that's your weak side in a 4-3. So it's always fun to dive into that. We get that question every few months, but it's always good to kind of touch up how those things stack up. Next up from John. Just got Patreon. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you, John. Again, guys, if you want to submit questions for the show, sign up on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. Submit questions to my DMs. I just ask, please lead with mailbag question so that when I go through these, I know that your message is a mailbag question. You're not trying to get a hold of me for something else. So from John, as a Colts fan, I love the Jacob Eason pick. He was an insane amount of potential. Obviously, I love the Wentz trade, but it makes me wonder what the plan is with Easton. What are your thoughts on him as a player prospect in the future? High-end backup or long-term starter or a trade candidate? I wasn't the biggest Jacob Eason guy. He does have developmental upside. He's got a really strong arm. There's a world where he becomes a starter. We're in a new era of quarterbacks, these pocket passing guys. Really the only pocket passers that make it, like true pocket passers, that, even like a Mac Jones or a Ryan Tannehill or Kirk Cousins, like they actually, and Kirk has evolved in this way. He wasn't always this way, so maybe Eason can do the same. But even the younger, stiffer players, they can move a little bit. And Kirk's got some sneaky speed. If you really watch him, he has some good runs. The true statue quarterbacks, Big Ben, Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, the reason they were able to last in this modern era is because they had so much time to become elite mentally. They compensated their lack of mobility with being a step ahead everywhere else. And I think for a Jacob Eason, I think Josh Rosen is having this struggle. Dwayne Haskins, like a lot of these stiff pocket passer guys, they really need to hit that elite status. And it's just sitting as a backup for a team, you're not going to get that experience. You're not going to get that development. So it's just he's in a really tough spot where he needs to thread that needle while also getting very limited reps. So I don't think he's got much trade value right now. Maybe a 5th or a 6th round pick, but I don't know why the Colts would take that. We are going to get preseason back this year. There was no preseason last year. So it's going to be a situation where he has 3 preseasons. If he really shows a lot, maybe Wentz flames out, he eventually gets time. But I do see him as a 2, 3, 4-year project. And that arm talent does give him upside, but again, it's just a matter of getting him up to speed on the mental side of things. So he has a chance, but at this point in time, he doesn't have a ton of value. From Loomer, what are the differences with Mac Jones and Joe Burrow? Burrow is much more sudden, right? Just the way he moves, he can react, and his mobility is so much better. I also think he throws with a lot more anticipation. I would still say his processor is better, though Mac Jones had the best processor in this class. So I think just the biggest difference would be Burrow is a much better athlete. He is a more sudden, natural mover in the pocket. He can get out on the move much better. He can scramble, pick up yardage much better. Now, Mac Jones is good at that. That's been I've constantly said, like, he gets slept on for his pocket awareness and all that stuff, but Burrow's just a next level up. So that's the biggest difference to me. Arm talent's comparable. I will say that. From CRB, as a Raiders fan, why? So that came in on draft night at 9:30, probably after the Alex Leatherwood pick. I can't explain it, man. I can't explain it. Find somebody that loves you the way John Gruden loves an overrated not even an overrated prospect. He was rated fine as a second-round prospect, Alex Leatherwood. But find someone that loves you the way John Gruden loves someone that played in the college football playoffs. Because that's the only thing that can explain why you take Alex Leatherwood, who could be a good football player. But it's the only way to explain that over Tevin Jenkins, who's a better right tackle prospect, period. There's no way around it. He's a better guard prospect than Alex Leatherwood is. And Christian Darrisaw, Samuel Cosmi, Dylan Radunes. All these guys are better tackle prospects than Leatherwood. I think if Leatherwood plays guard, you can learn to live with it in time, but it's going to take some time because they're probably going to fail him at tackle first and then move him to guard 3 or 4 years from now when they finally got to pay him, just like what happened with the left tackle there. Struggled for a long time and then eventually became good and they had to pay him. It's just rough, man. It's really, really rough. The Raiders situation. It's ugly. From Senor Titan. Just want to know if I think Caleb Farley might actually be a necessary risk for the Titans. The defense was horrid last year. The team had to let some big names walk in free agency. I just don't think they had the cap space to fix this defense without swinging for the fences. Farley is definitely a risk, but he has the upside to be a star player. That's the kind of risk they had to make if they want to contend. That's a good perspective on it. Because I was saying, are they the team that could afford that risk? Well, it's a good point. Like, they need to hit on some big swings if they're going to be in contention. So if you want to look at it that way, I actually appreciate that perspective. I'm always talking about teams being aggressive and doing what they can to win a Super Bowl. So I gave it a B because it is such a boom or bust pick. But when you look at it from that perspective, it's like they had to hit on Caleb Farley to be a day one star for them. It does make a little more sense. So, I like the pick. I didn't think it was like the best pick in the first round, so I didn't give it an A or anything, but it was a good, solid pick. I'd be pretty excited to see Caleb Farley if I was a Titans fan. You're just praying to God that back fully heals and stays fully healed. From WG, in my opinion, after the draft of the Bears, the favorite to win the NFC North. Well, it obviously comes down to Aaron Rodgers. I think it's about 50-50 right now on if Aaron Rodgers plays for Green Bay. So if Aaron Rodgers returns, the Packers are still the favorites. Although I think that gap is a lot closer this year than it was last year. If he's not, I think you're looking at Minnesota and Chicago are probably the leaders there. I really like what Minnesota did as well. I think that offense is going to be humming this year. I don't feel the same way about the Bears. I think you see Dalton at first, and then, I'm not confident. I like the risk on Fields. I'm not confident that Fields is going to be a top 10 quarterback or this superstar guy, especially in year one. So I think the future outlook for the Bears looks a lot better than the next year outlook. I do think they got better, for sure. But I would probably rank it right now with Rodgers there, Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago. And then if Rodgers is out, I still like the Packers. I don't think they'd be out of the race, but I think it would flip and you'd go Minnesota, Chicago, Green Bay. From Rory, what do I think about the Lions taking St. Brown and the undrafted free agent wide receivers they picked up? St. Brown was the perfect fit there. They needed a blue-collar type of receiver. So he fits exactly what they want to do. He's going to run block. He can get open too. So that was a perfect fit for the Lions and for St. Brown. And then for the free agents they picked up, I know they got Sage Surratt. I'm just not a fan of him. I don't think he's good. So I'll just leave it at that. I think that they also get the Jonathan Adams, or I think they got some contested catch guys. They got enough. I don't think the undrafted guys they picked up are anything to be too excited about, but I do like the St. Brown pick a lot. From Geometric Heat, what do I think the likelihood of Trey Lance hitting his full potential with the 49ers? Also calling my shot that Patrick Jones will be a superstar for the Vikings in 3 years. Yeah, I think it's very likely. It is very likely that Trey Lance is a top 5 quarterback in about 3 years. I'm not afraid to say it because I think that system is so well catered to Lance's skill set, and they're going to be in a position where he can develop well with Jimmy there for maybe a year. I love everything about the Trey Lance pick for the Niners. And then, all right, you guys heard it here first. Geometric Heat says Patrick Jones will be a superstar for the Vikings in 3 years. I'm a little worried about his arm length. If he's going to be that Daniil Hunter type of power rusher, that might limit his upside, but it's not a death sentence by any stretch. From Carter, who do I think will have a better season, Darnold or Danny Dimes? I'm going to go with Darnold. I'm going to back Sam Darnold. I think Carolina's in a great spot to let him thrive a little bit. From Costa, hope you're resting up from the chaos we call draft season. I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed my break. Now that draft is over, we all have some time to breathe before deep dives begin. Could I do a video on my GM front office rankings in the league? It could be a podcast topic. We'll see. A lot of people ask about that. It's just very tough. It's very tough because there's like a pretty clear like top 7 and then like a bottom 3 or 4, and then it's really tough to rank that middle cluster. But maybe like a top 10, bottom 10 podcast topic would be good. P.S. I'd also love it if you can include a scheme section in my deep dives. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Just spend a minute kind of going through the schemes that these teams run. It's a great suggestion. I like that. Probably wouldn't factor into my rankings so much, but would be a good thing to kind of cover before I get into the offense, the defense, just kind of detail what the scheme is. I like that suggestion. You very well might see that. Mr. Relevant, I understand you aren't a fan of the Travis Etienne pick in the first round. I'm not a huge fan of it either. Urban Meyer said he wants to use him as a slot and as a receiver. Does that change how I feel about the pick? That makes me hate the pick even more. Because if you're planning on using him a bunch in the slot, dude, just take Elijah Moore. Because he's way better at it than Travis Etienne. So that's just stupid, in my opinion. I don't know, man. He's going to be a good player. He's going to be a good player, but it just wasn't a good pick. You have James Robinson there. It was just kind of dumb. So if J.J. Watt had not dealt with injuries, do I think him or Aaron Donald would have had a more dominant career? I think Aaron Donald is still a more dominant player than J.J. Watt, but it's not a massive gap. It's pretty tight. I mean, J.J. Watt was incredible, but I think Donald has been even better. From James, Brian Gutekunst means good in German, and Kunst means art. So his name means good art in German. Interesting. Do I think that Gutekunst is trying to let us know something? Is he some kind of satirical art in managing the Green Bay Packers? That would be about the only good explanation for what he's doing. Because, my God, the last 2 off seasons have been an absolute shit show in Green Bay. Brandon Ferreira, I think that... sorry, not a mailbag question. That's actually all we got. So thank you to my patrons for your support and the mailbag questions. Thank you for watching the show. We're pushing about an hour here, so nice, fun podcast. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on anything we talked about here. And probably going to be on another hiatus here on the channel. Going to have a video announcing the roster, I guess, when that's all done. But going to be, again, pretty quiet leading up to deep dive season. And make sure you guys are also following TFG Plays, my secondary YouTube channel, and my Twitch, because once that roster's done, I'm going to be starting up some good streaming content there. And going to be a fun summer, man. I'm looking forward to it. Appreciate you guys for watching, for listening, and we'll see you guys later. Peace.